Have you ever read a question on your certification test where it talked about the grade level a teacher taught or the age of a student? Like Mrs. Smith as a 10th grade US history teacher at XYZ high school. And then you freak out thinking, oh my God, it's a high school teacher. They're teaching social studies. Is there a certain way I have to think about it? Or if they talk about a third grade teacher doing a reading activity in the classroom. Have you ever thought, all right, how is the age of the student going to affect my answer on this question? If that's something that came to your mind, welcome. My name is Dr. Ray. I am the founder of Learning Liaisons. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 things that have to come into play that pretty much will dictate whether you have to take into account the age of a student in a scenario-based question on any certification test you're taking, whether it's a scenario word problem on a math test or an elementary or a middle school or high school, different content areas. We're going to talk about in this video. Before we jump in, please hit the like button, subscribe, drop me a comment below. The YouTube gods like that. This way, more teachers just like you get this content to help them on the upcoming certification test. If this is something you'd like to hear about, let's get to it. A lot of the big frustrations I get from students, college students and classroom teachers on their various certification exams when we do our workshops at school districts or in our online boot camps or online workshops. A lot of people always express their frustration regardless of the certification test. Like, hey, Dr. A, when they talk about the subject area, or more importantly, when they talk about the grade level or the age of the student specifically, it kind of throws me off because I'm not sure if it needs to change my thought process, right? So whether it's special education, ESOL, middle school math, high school math, social studies, a pedagogy exam like a PLT for Praxis or ProEd in Florida or PPR in Texas, this often can throw a bone to teachers like, what am I supposed to do here? So I have good news, okay? The age of the student or the grade level, same thing, right? At the end of the day, the age of the student and the grade level is irrelevant in a scenario-based question on a multiple choice test, unless, here's the caveat, unless it has to do with one of the following 3 things. Does the scenario, right? Does the scenario in the question at hand discuss the cognitive development level, I'm just going to abbreviate, of the student? Or 2, and we'll discuss these, 2, does it talk about the emotional development of the student? Or number 3, you want to guess? The physical development level of a student. So cognitive, emotional, or physical development. Now, what the heck does that mean? All right. Let's take a look at this question that's on the screen, because I am sure that you're already reading it while I'm talking and not paying attention. So pay attention, hit that rewind button. So I go over a lot of different strategies in our boot camps. I'm not going to go into the strategies here. We're just going to, my big thing is we don't read the question first. I go through my whole checklist of items. You can go check that out on our website. But I'm just going to read this question to you. We'll talk about this, and then we'll go into these 1, 2, 3 details. Mr. Meyer's father manages a local ice cream production plant, and he wants to take his 3rd grade class on a field trip to the plant. Who should he coordinate with to facilitate this field trip? Now, it says 3rd grade. It doesn't matter if it says 7th grade, 12th grade, 10th grade, kindergarten. It's irrelevant. What are we talking about here, right? So when we look at these answer choices, I'm not going to read them all to you. That's not the focus of this video. You read through the answer choices very quickly here. You're talking about curriculum, right? You're talking about field trips, okay? Now, the answer to this question, because I'm sure if I didn't reveal the answer, you'd freak out and write messages and comments below. Oh my God, what's the answer, right? We're talking about field trips, and we're talking about curriculum objectives and follow-up activities, right? Teaching and Learning 101. So whether you're watching a video in class, whether you're going on a field trip, whether you're doing a lesson, whether you're doing some kind of project or presentation in the class, right? At the end of the day, 30,000 foot concept. Is it aligned with the objectives? And do you follow up and do you find out if they actually know the material? In this case, we're talking about an ice cream plant, right? Is that really relevant? No, I could insert anything in there. Go into a bank. Go into watch a play if you're an ELA. Maybe you're a high school ELA teacher and take your kids on a field trip to a play that you're reading a book in class. Whatever. Let your mind run away with that. But the point of this whole conversation is we're talking about objectives and teaching and learning here, so it doesn't matter what the grade level is. All right. So before we go on to another example, let's back up here. So I don't want to leave you in the wind. So what do these things talk about, right? What do they mean? Cognitive, physical, and emotional. When we talk about cognitive development, there should be some names that pop in your head instantly. And one of the big names, which doesn't matter what exam you're taking, especially pedagogy exam in any state, any state across the United States, you're talking about Jean Piaget, right? I'm not going to go in the whole lesson on Piaget. We talk about in our courses and things that nature in our website. But Piaget's biggest claim to fame, right, is that he talks about his 4 stages of cognitive development, right? So basically, depending on the age of the human being, right, it lines up with what they're able to do cognitively. So I like to keep everything black and white. That's like saying, can you give algebra to a kindergarten student? Of course not. They look at you and pick their nose and go, what's going on, right? Just threw the pick a nose and thing in there. But you get my point, right? We're talking about cognitive development level. Any type of question on any exam, and I'm sure you've heard this, if you're a classroom teacher, you probably hear this 10 times a week, right? The developmental level, right? Is your lesson appropriate for their level of development? That's Jean Piaget. Are they able, so differentiate the instruction, giving things that are on the certain level of development and understanding that the kids have in your classroom, whether you're elementary, middle school, or high school teacher, right? So Piaget, example for cognitive development. Next, talk about emotional development, right? You can bring in Erik Erikson, psychosocial, right? That theory, based on circumstances and issues that come up in life, what kind of decisions does a human being take? And he groups that stages by ages, okay? Now, safe thing for you as Erik Erikson is, yes, he's a popular and important theorist, but he's not as prevalent on exams as people like Piaget or people like Vygotsky, or when we talk about Howard Gardner, things along those lines are more popular, but that's my point. So if you see Erik Erikson or Lawrence Kohlberg is another example, that's when you start thinking, all right, age matters, okay? And last but not least is physical development. So what does that mean when we talk about physical development? Well, that's when you talk about human growth and development, right? Adolescence, middle school versus high school. When you talk about puberty and growth and cliques and peer pressure and all that kind of stuff, that's physical development, okay? So quick recap, cognitive, emotional, physical development. If your scenario doesn't talk about any of those things, and obviously on your certification exams, this one is going to be the most popular one, probably 85 to 90% of the time. If it's not, it's irrelevant. You could argue with me all you want. Maybe there's one instance here and there, very, very highly unlikely, but it does happen once in a while. But for the most part, it's irrelevant. I could show you tons of questions, right? Here's another question. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all kinds of test-taking strategies in this video, but I'm going to read this question to you. As a new teacher to the high school, Mr. Avery has been assigned a mentor. He is delighted to discover that his mentor is in the same grade level as him, but disappointed to find out that the mentor is teaching a different subject. How can he best use his mentor experience as he adjusts to his new school, right? Then some people talk about, all right, high school, or we got teenagers, right? I was scared some of you guys when I said that. So 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old people, doesn't matter. No, because we're talking about mentorship. And we're talking about guiding people and teaching strategies and routine and behavior, right? So it has nothing to do with the age group of the students in the classroom, right? Here's one more. As a new 9th grade English teacher, Mrs. Smith wants to contribute to her school in any way she can. She's looking for opportunities outside the classroom that will improve the student's educational rank and increase her own students' academic performance. Which of the following suggestions would help her accomplish that goal? So we're talking about a high school English teacher. Does it matter if this is English? No. Does it matter if they're teaching 9th grade or 5th grade or 3rd grade? No, because at the end of the day, we are talking about instruction. We're talking about objectives again, right? Just looking at this question real quick, when we look at the keywords in this question, we're talking about improving the educational ranking and increasing your own students' academic performance. So I could insert at the beginning as a new kindergarten teacher. You want to contribute to the school. As a fourth grade teacher in university elementary school. Doesn't matter what it is, because at the end of the day, it's those high level educational concepts. So quick recap, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for staying with me to the end of this video. And real quick, in the comments below before we sign off, drop a comment. Let me know what you teach and what state you teach in. I like to know all the people in our community. So a quick recap here is, remember, when you're given a multiple choice question on a test, these are pedagogy type of exams, questions, but it's same thing with math, science, English, doesn't matter what it is. At the end of the day, there are only 3 things that will affect the way you think about a scenario in a multiple choice question. Does it address the physical, emotional, or cognitive development of the student, right? If your answer is no to all of those, it's irrelevant. But if the answer is to yes with one of those, then you have to shift your mindset. All right, so great job. Once again, I'm Dr. Ray. I'm founder of the Learning Liaisons. I lead our pedagogy boot camps on our website. These are example questions from our professional ed or PLT course or PPR for our Texas peeps out there. So if you're interested in learning some strategies and really how to pass your exam on the first attempt, go ahead and check out our website at thelearningliaisons.com. All the descriptions are in the link below. And we also have some great free resources, free Facebook groups for different exams, whether you're in Florida, Texas, or national for the praxis exams. If you have any questions, please also drop them in the comments below, and I will answer them as soon as I can. And always remember, it's when you pass, not if you pass your certification exams. All right, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next video.